Hey everyone, it's Bruno here joining you from the Cromwell Street campus in Collingwood. We're in week 3, and in this session for creative theory, we're going to be covering one of the last elements, I should say, of the double diamond model. We're going to be talking about ideation, prototyping, and the importance of collaborating with your peers, whether those are, your classmates in the context of a subject or people that you'll be working with in the industry itself. Finally, we're going to be talking about the second assessment for creative theory, and slowly but surely we'll identify how that will work in an online environment. For those that read the assessment itself, I'm sure you're aware that it's a team assessment, so meaning that you need to get into teams and work as a team throughout the next few weeks. And that means that you also need to engage in different sorts of research and whatnot outside of a classroom environment in order to successfully complete this assessment. So more on that soon. So just to recap, in week 1, we talked about the model and covered Discover. We talked about how to gather insights for a specific problem. Last week, we talked about defining those in order to get a better understanding of the problem, but most importantly, identify an area for focus. And as mentioned earlier in today's session, we're going to be talking about ideation, which in that actual model here falls under develop. So next week, we'll be closing the loop and we'll be exploring the final part of that model, which constitutes of delivering solutions that work. So more on that soon, and I'm sure that the last 2 quadrants should equip you with everything you need in order to complete that second assessment. To recap, the first 4 weeks of this subject will be us exploring various principles of critical thinking and using, design thinking to support us in various ways of form. And from week 5 onwards, we're going to be really looking at that foundation and applying it to an interior design and architectural context. So something to look forward to. Okay, what's ideation? I'm going to go back 1 slide. Is that a new term? Is that something that you've heard before? I'm going to pick on you here, Kate, because you're the only person that I can see. That's not to say turn your camera off. That's more for everyone else to turn their camera on. Ideation. Did you talk about that with other lecturers? Does the term ring a bell?
Not really from the top of my head. For me, it's a new term, but I'm assuming by the way breaking it down that it's referring to obviously an idea that I believe that it's building on an idea, and then from obviously that point on, that's when you start to prototype. So obviously to come up with an idea, to come up with a way to solve an issue or to face your client's needs or wants or whatever it is, that would be the first thing I assume. And then going into your ideation, coming up with an idea or a way to solve that or change that. That's my interpretation. I'm not that great at putting words together, but yeah, I think that's
well. That basically summarizes the whole concept of ideation. So
perfect.
Maybe not. So here's some definitions for you all. And by the way, the slides are available on Canvas as well under week 3. So ideation is a process of coming up with new ideas or idea generation, as some may refer it to. Designers are asked to think big without restraints. At least that's usually the case at the beginning of some projects. And the whole idea is to go through an experimental type of stage in order to achieve best possible outcomes. So usually those stages, you'll be hearing things such as there's no such thing as a bad idea, and that's an opportunity for you to be as creative as you can at a very, very early stage. And this means looking at the problem, falling in love with the problem, and slowly but surely, based on your understanding of whether it's a context or anything else, trying to find solutions for those accordingly. Ideation in practice. Now, this will depend on the industry that you're currently working in. So the example here on the screen represents what you may see in some design firms. You may also see, as mentioned last week, mood boards and all sorts of things. Irrelevant of how those ideas are communicated, the whole idea here is to really spend some time and put in as much effort as possible at a very early stage to explore all the avenues and come up with the best ideas possible. Part of the reason why I've picked that image here is to show you that in that particular instance, there's a couple of rough sketches. There's post-it notes all over the place, right?
I don't know, sorry to interrupt you. I don't know if it's just my screen, but I can only see your actual cover slide that says creative theory.
Ah, okay. Just give me one sec. Thanks for pointing this out.
That's okay, sorry.
Sharing again, and I might share my desktop and see whether that makes a difference.
That's better.
Yeah, is that better?
Yeah, all good.
Okay, so let me go back a few slides. So those are the definitions that I was referring to earlier. As mentioned, those are available on Canvas as well, and describes in a nutshell what ideation is. And this is the actual slide that I was referring to just before. And that image here demonstrates different things, right? First of all, the fact that the ideas are very rough. None of those sketches are polished, and in that particular instance, doesn't even relate to buildings or interiors and things like that, right? You want to be able to generate as many ideas as possible at this very early stage without necessarily, polishing them. What that means is, pencil, pen, paper, napkins, which is the typical cliche. But at the end of the day, whatever's at your disposal, just make the most out of it and try to cover as much ground as possible in less time. Interesting thing here is the use of post-it notes, right? Different firms will be using different colors for different purposes. Earlier I was talking to someone in class, and I couldn't help noticing that she had one of those multifunctional pens that allows her to push a button and here comes a green pen. Push another button and here comes a red pen. So those are very simple techniques that could help you organize your thoughts in addition to having a visual representation, whether it's using post-its or whether it's just having sketches all over the place, right? Working in an organization as well, what you notice is people will gather around that if you're working in a team environment. And all of a sudden, they'll be moving one post-it from one end to another, just to, I guess, cluster some information or simply, get rid of information, things that may be irrelevant or things that, may be outdated. So again, that's a very quick way to visualize the state of a project. It's very important here that if you, either at home or in an organization, use such tools, that you actually go through the process of capturing, whether it's for a photo or some other sort of technology each and every iterations. Obviously, let's not try to track, where each and every post-it move from, but at least get a sense of each and every milestones. Meaning that if you went to a client meeting and came back and the direction changed for whatever reason, make sure that you capture the previous version before actually going in and moving things around. That will come in extremely handy, especially in a few weeks' time. Your client come to you and say, you know what we talked about in that meeting, I actually want to go back to that. So the same thing applies to when you be learning software and things like that. It's extremely important that you manage each and every of your file with some sort of a version control in mind. So assuming you were to work on a Word document, PowerPoint presentation, or any other thing, you can easily achieve that by putting a date to your file, or something like V1 for version 1 or V2 for version 2. That will also correlate with the date itself. That will come in extremely handy towards the tail end of a project when you'll be invoicing your clients as well. So you'll be able to join the dots between version 2, that took me 6 hours, and that's how much you need to get paid, as an example. So the whole idea here is to start somewhere. The whole idea here is to try to list as many ideas as possible, and to do that in a way whereby you're engaging with your client. So, for instance, as we talked about in the last 2 sessions, if you're going through the discovery stage of a project, listen. Listen, ask the right questions, and often you'll be achieving amazing results simply by asking why, right? In fact, it's been proven that in most instances, if you were to ask why 5 times, that's only then that you'll be able to reach the root cause of an issue, a problem, and whatnot. So don't be afraid to ask why. And as mentioned earlier, no idea is a bad idea. Now, if we're to think about the second assessment for this subject, you will need to basically design or redesign, I should say, your partner's commute. This is a bit of an interesting concept to grasp. Talking to some of your peers earlier in a classroom environment, we decided to explore everyone's commute from the house to the campus. Obviously, you're all studying online here. This may not necessarily be applicable for you, but essentially we can agree on perhaps picking something else, such as your commute from your house to your work, or something that would be relevant for that actual assessment. So under assessment 2 within Canvas, you will have access to a questionnaire that will help you at a very early stage to get an understanding of who your partner is, what your partner journey look like, and so forth. And it's recommended that you go through that actual questionnaire when the time comes to start capturing as many insights as possible. So I'm going to try to access this here by clicking on my Canvas instance. So just bear with me. There we go. And I'm going to go to my dashboard. So you should have something fairly similar on your computer. The only difference is you have less subjects. So I'm going to go and click on Creative Theory Online, which is in fact your class. I'm going to navigate my way to the assignment section. And finally, I will click on assignment 2, where you will have access to the information that relates to that assignment itself, including the due date, which in this case is week 8. And finally, I want to bring your attention to assessment 2, where you'll be able to access information that relates to assessment 2 itself, but also a predefined questionnaire that should help you get the ball rolling. So we haven't selected partners yet. This will come hopefully in the very near future. And once you know who your partner is, it's recommended that you actually spend some time to go through that actual questionnaire itself. Now, this here is just a guideline. It should help you as a foundation, but it shouldn't necessarily stop you asking additional sort of questions. So we're going to be talking about that in more details in future sessions, but in the meantime, I would recommend that you familiarize yourself with that document because it will come in very handy in the very near future. So going back to that slide, I'm going to go back to full screen mode. And to recap, for this actual assessment, you need to gather as many ideas as possible at a very early stage. You'll be doing that for listening to your partner. And as part of your ideation process, you'll be asking yourself what you could do in order to improve on your partner's experience as a whole. Now, no idea is a bad idea yet, right? Try to cover as much ground as possible, and with your partner, you will slowly but surely identify and prioritize which idea you may want to pursue. And again, very interesting image here. Notice the different colors that this guy is using in his book. So again, different colors could mean different things. I'm gonna go back to Canvas for a minute, and I'm gonna go back to the subject itself. You'll also notice that I've added under, go back one more time, under module 3, a small video that I'm going to play in a few minutes. This is how wild I want your ideas to be at a very early stage. For those that's been following Elon Musk, who is the actual person behind Tesla, the car, you know that he also has a company called The Boring Company. More information about that company can be accessed here. And the project that I'm about to show you was his response to trying to get rid of traffic in parts of the States. Let's have a look. For those still online, have you seen that video before? And what are your thoughts so far in relationship to the second assessment? Does this somehow relate to redesigning someone's commute or not?
Hi, yeah, I haven't seen that video before, no. Um, and I think it does relate to redesigning someone's commute or more like a transport system. Um, and it's actually kind of good watching that. I was like, I had not even thought of that. Like my head was already thinking of things that you could do, and it was nowhere near that. So it was actually really good to just make me aware of like all those other possibilities that I haven't got to yet.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sam. Um, have a look at what the Boring Company is also working on. By the way, this video was released in April 2018, and they've already built their first prototype, and that just went viral when it was released, and different parts of the state got in touch with them because they want to implement similar things in order to help them in their cities. So very interesting place to start if you're looking for inspiration. And just want to use this as an opportunity to reiterate the fact that at this point in time, your ideas can be as wild as you want. So once you have access to the questionnaire, once you start talking to your partner, obviously all those ideas will need to relate directly to their needs. So just as an example, if we were to start talking about your commute, and let's actually give it a try. Do you actually catch public transport or drive or on a regular basis? This could be, for instance, to work as an example, or to do something on a weekly basis. What's your week like? And is there any sort of commute involved whatsoever in that?
Yeah, for me, obviously I've got to commute to work. So I work in the city and live, out in one of the suburbs. But I have been driving lately. I really have an option to catch a train, and I have not been using it. I've just been driving.
Okay. And why is that?
Mostly around working hours. So if I work long days, I really don't love being on the train too late at night.
Okay. And what sort of distance are we talking about?
About 16 Ks.
Okay. That's fairly decent, and it will take you roughly, depending on the speed, obviously, 20 to 30 minutes. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. But obviously longer in traffic, and then I park and walk into work. So either side adds a little bit on.
So if we were to focus on that commute in particular, just as an example, just to get everyone to start thinking about what's required here, is there something that you would want more of? Or on the complete end of the spectrum, is there something that you may want less of? So let me give you an example. If I'm stuck in traffic, I personally really enjoy listening to music. That said, I find myself often in a situation where I may not have Wi-Fi coverage or even any sort of data, meaning that I need to download my music on my phone, as an example, or go through a whole range of processes in order to get more of my music. What does that resonate with you? Maybe music is not the perfect example for everyone, but if you were to think about you being stuck in traffic, what could make your experience more enjoyable?
Yeah, I think for me, I guess it's the trade-off between like if I was to catch the train, then I would be able to use that time to do other things, or whether it's reading or emails or whatever it is. And in the car, you obviously can't do that, and I tend to either talk on the phone or, like you said, like music and podcasts and stuff like that. But yeah, it's interesting because the train takes longer usually, but it's usually a more useful time. Whereas driving is quicker, but you don't really get to do anything with that time.
It's very hard, actually. We do get, we can't really get the best of both worlds at the end of the day. Let me ask you a couple of questions regarding catching a train. Is it easy to, for instance, have a seat on the train? Or is it, you on a daily basis, for instance, having to wrestle your way through in order to have a spot where you can generally settle for your commute and whatnot?
It is Adelaide, so yeah, it's easy to find a seat. It's pretty unlikely that you wouldn't get a seat.
Okay, perfect then. So going back to the questionnaire itself, once you're going through those questions, it should actually prompt you to get a better understanding of the needs and wants of a person that you'll be working with. So essentially, everyone's commute will be different and everyone's outcomes at the end of the day will be different, right? The example that I showed you with having a network of tunnels underneath the city is great, right? But it may not be the best solution for you here, Sam, based on what you're experiencing, either catching the train or driving to work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fine.
Perfect. So, which brings me to what we have here on the screen. Whilst engaging in such conversation with your partner, it's highly recommended that you differ from any sort of judgment and bias. As mentioned earlier, encourage wildest ideas possible. Stay focused on the topic. It's very easy to actually go on a different tangent. So you notice that there's some recommended time slots on the questionnaire itself. Try to abide to that. And try to be respectful of your partner's time as well by having one conversation at a time. Be as visual as possible. And finally, when it comes to ideation, go for quantity. Try to explore each and every avenue possible. And at a later stage, we're going to be looking at refining your ideas and, further developing those accordingly. Last week, we talked about circular economy. I thought I'd throw that in there because it's very relevant. So there's a few questions that you could ask yourself as well if you see such opportunities. And some of those are, what is it and how does it work? What is the desired impact? What makes it circular? Who is it for? And are any other users in that value chain? So let's talk about Uber as an example. In the context of commute, if we were to look at Uberpool, which pretty much constitutes of someone booking a ride from their mobile phone, and through that process, looking for people that are going in the same direction. And you end up in a car with a driver, with perhaps 2 to 3, if not 4, strangers that are going in the same direction. Couple of advantages there. Obviously, if we're to talk about it from a sustainable point of view, it's just one car going from A to B, as opposed to 4 or 5 cars. From a raw material point of view, there's amazing benefits to that. And from an end user point of view, you'll be paying for a similar type of service, but you're paying a fraction of the price. So as an example, Sam, if you were to do some sort of a carpool, it could potentially help not only from a sustainability point of view, but also in various ways as well that relates to the circular economy. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is the solution again for you. This is there just to give everyone some food for thought. Now, once you've generated all your ideas, whether you're sketching, using post-it notes or any other sort of techniques, it's extremely important that you prioritize which one you may want to pursue. And the following slide should give you some insights on how to do that. So if we were to look at the screen here, what we have on the top is what's considered as high impact. And what we have on the bottom is considered by low impact. Now, I didn't come up with this. This was collected from the Circular Design Guide. So there's a link there where you'll be able to find out more about those concepts. But essentially, if you're using post-it notes, you could slowly but surely start moving your post-it notes in either one of those sections. So let's start from the top left-hand corner. So that section here refers to the low-hanging fruits. Refers to it as low-hanging fruits because those are usually the easiest things to implement. You may already have a very strong foundation. You may already have an existing process that to a certain extent works, but needs to be refined in order to achieve its full potential. This is very much high impact because most of the time it will be at a low cost. On the right-hand side, still on high impact is the question, does potential gain justify disruption? So going back to Uber as an example, Uber as a company was extremely disruptive in the sort of service that offers its end users. And, it didn't come cheap, right? There's a lot of experimentation that resulted in the platform that we have access today. And that was starting from nothing. So ask yourself, okay, well, is it worth investing in research and everything else in order to achieve the sort of impacts desired? In the case of Uber, the answer is yes. It's a company that allows people to travel from A to B. And the interesting thing about it is it doesn't necessarily own any vehicle. So if you were to compare that with the taxi model, it's very different. There's a lot of resources that goes in not only purchasing those taxis, but also maintaining them. And it's a constant cost associated to running the business. Whereas Uber's model is completely different. People can subscribe as drivers and use their own vehicles. So if we're to look at this question here, yes, it's extremely impactful and disruptive. And yes, it may cost slightly more, but it's certainly something worth exploring further as opposed to disregard as an idea. Moving to the bottom of a diagram is the low impact type of ideas. So starting from the left, ideas that are kind of good, but may require looking for additional opportunities to increase the impact. And finally, on the right-hand side, bottom right-hand corner, ideas that you should probably park as opposed to try to further develop at this point in time. So I'm hoping that once you start talking to your partner, once you've reached a number of ideas, you'll be able to use a model such as this one to really identify which one of those ideas you may want to pursue as part of this assessment. And by the way, you can go through the same process in any sort of interior design or architectural project in order to refine your concepts ahead of communicating those to your clients. Now, something that I've personally observed over the last few years working for a variety of interior design and architectural firms is if this is embedded as part of the actual process, they will have a wall designated for that. In some instances, I've personally participated in meetings whereby you will have a range of ideas or mood boards or concept sketches on the wall, and for a minute, everyone will stop working and start talking about things, start deconstructing those ideas, start throwing more ideas and suggestions, things to consider based on their own practice, based on their own, reasoning and whatnot. And all of a sudden, this then morphs into something richer and slightly more interesting that as designers, you may not have considered. A lot of organizations as well use this as an opportunity to assign designers mentors. So you may have the opportunity to work with senior partners through that process, or simply tell to one of your colleagues, oh, what you're doing is very interesting and groundbreaking, or an area that I'm very much interested in. Is there any chance for me to either offer some support or one or another work on that project? So that's the beauty of visualizing your ideas. That's the beauty of visualizing where you're at in a project to not only provide transparency, but also a platform to have those amazing conversations. Another tool that you may want to consider is here on the screen. So if you were to think about the diagram, that's another way of selecting which one of your ideas you may want to pursue. So again, starting from the top left-hand corner, you may ask yourself which one of your ideas are viable as either a business model or, depending on what you're working on, something else. On the right-hand side, is there a value for that from a customer point of view? So in other words, if I was to implement a service such as Uber, what's guaranteeing me that I will have my end users engaged in that sort of service, right? And talking about Uber again, there's various ways to find out whether your product's got any value. The easiest way, I should say, is to interview a group of people that reflects your target audience. So I'm sure that you've all at one point in your life completed either a survey or an interview process to either help a brand or anyone else in their continuous improvement processes. It could be as simple as that. If you're launching a new product, you could have a focus group to get a sense of whether or not your product will be a hit. In the context of interior design and architecture, this could be through model making. This could be through, again, focus groups and much more. Finally, we need to talk about the technical aspect of it, whether it's feasible, whether it's reliable, and the idea is to try to find a balance between all those that will provide the value desired to your end user. So that's another way to very quickly get a sense of whether you should pursue an idea or not. Assuming you were to work on post-it notes as well, you can just move those accordingly very quickly and proceed from that point onwards. That's an interesting slide, and I think I've touched on that last week. It's part of one of your foundation subjects, right? The task ahead may seem very abstract. It may seem, very daunting to a certain extent, but use that as a learning opportunity. Be curious, experiment, try to generate as many ideas as possible. Wildest the better, from my point of view. And with your partner, you will be slowly but surely refining those to address his or her immediate needs. And I'm sure that through the process, you'll be able to actually create or redesign, I should say, their commute and their daily experiences. So go in, experiment, fail often, learn from that, and keep chipping away. Now, prototyping, as you soon find out, can be done in various ways. So once you get to a point where you've identified what direction you may want to pursue, there's different things that can be done in order to take your ideas to a whole different level. So again, depending on the project, you may want to test the various sorts of scenarios just to make sure that it's sound, that it's feasible and whatnot. And you can do that very easily by using non-expensive type of materials. So in the context of interior design and architecture, this could be through model making as an example. Not sure if Marco mentioned it already, but in Design Drawing 1, you will be going through a series of model making activities using paper. So that's super easy to do at a very low cost. Now, in the context of your commune, it's a whole different kind of concept here. So what sort of prototypes can you do in order to help your client or partner? Here's a couple of examples. Storyboards or road plays can be explored. I'm not expecting anyone there to do any sort of realistic storyboards at this stage with renders and all these sort of things. Stick figures should do the trick, at least for now. It's more so giving you at this stage a platform to communicate your ideas. So I really like the idea of role plays or scenario development or even journey mapping that could really help you not only get a better understanding of what you're doing, but also, most importantly, communicate your ideas to your clients. If something doesn't work in your prototype, it won't work in real life. Materials that you may want to explore, again, not necessarily for this actual assessment per se, but for future assessments, things such as paper, blue tack, stick tape, Lego is a great one for our industry. It's crazy to think about how many things you can do with some Lego blocks, cardboard, inexpensive type of options, and of course, sticky notes. So go in, experiment. I'm sure that you already have some of those materials in your art kit. Don't go and purchase more. That's not what I'm saying here. Try to be creative with the material that you already have. Towards the end of that conversation, there may be an opportunity to gather additional feedback from your partner and your peers. So use that to the best of your ability to refine your ideas and concepts. Listen and observe, and when the time comes, learn as much as you can from your peers. And this will really help you, take your ideas to the next level. Again, research, plan, look at what's feasible, what's not, and engage in conversation with, different people that may be involved in your actual project. So, as an example, if you were to dig tunnels under a city, who do you talk to make something like that happen, right? That's obviously an example, but again, think about your partner's commute. We had a very few interesting ideas earlier, one of which was to provide similar sort of services that airplanes provides to public transport. So if you think about the notion of having a business class or first class, where the minute that you walk in, you're given, I don't know, a glass of water or a glass of champagne or whatever that is, was explored earlier as part of enhancing someone's experience. Look at what's happening in other countries. So, for instance, in Switzerland, if you were to catch a train, not all trains, but some trains, you will be able to choose to book a normal sort of carriage or a business class type of carriage. So that's part of the culture, that's part of how we do things there, and that's almost kind of part of business as usual. Does that actually relate to your needs or your partner's needs? Worth exploring, but also look at what's happening across the board, right? Someone earlier today mentioned having virtual reality headset in public transport, again, to fulfill someone's specific needs. I thought that was quite interesting. But it could be as simple as, let's have Wi-Fi on a bus or something else, right? If someone needs to actually do some work on the public transport, having this small add-on could be extremely useful. So again, try to engage in some research based on your client's needs, looking at what's happening as well across the world. Last but not least, I'm not going to go through this today. I've uploaded that on Canvas itself. Just be aware that we may all have some bias. So what that means is, it's very easy sometimes to jump to conclusions. And for your reference, I've captured here the most common type of bias. So read through those and develop a sense of self-awareness when you're asking your partners those questions further down the track. It's very easy to jump to conclusion without necessarily getting a sense of a whole picture. So restrain yourself from jumping to conclusions, and as much as you can, listen. Listen to what your partner's got to say, and hopefully you'll be able to slowly but surely populate the questionnaire itself. I'm going to go back to Canvas for a minute, just to reiterate the fact that very soon we're going to be selecting a partner to work on this project. Now, there's a couple of ways that we can go around that. We can, in fact, do it in a class environment. So for those watching the recording at a later stage, perhaps get in touch with me. I know exactly who's in the classroom, and we'll know very soon who may need a partner. So I'll be able to connect you with your peers. But essentially, outside of this classroom environment, there'll be an opportunity to connect with one of your peers and have that conversation with them. As mentioned earlier, this here is guideline. You can, as a strict minimum, follow that guideline and ask questions. That would be when you'll be listening and capturing your notes. So I would recommend that you do that perhaps with a printed version of this document. It might be slightly easier, or perhaps you can even set up a Zoom account. By the way, if you go to Zoom's website, so let me do that. It's zoom.us. You should be able to basically create a new account for free and generate a meeting link in order to engage in a conversation with your partner. So that's basically the tool that we are using right now. The free version will allow users to be in a video conference for 45 minutes, and then you lose the connection. But guess what? You can, at any time after that 45 minutes, jump straight back in. Within Zoom, you can also record the conversations that you're having with your partners, and that could be one of many ways to take your notes. If you have a printer handy, by all means, print that document and use that as a guide. But essentially, the whole idea here is to go through each and every of those steps with your partner. And this, as part of assessment 2, will constitute, let me go back one step. This, as part of assessment 2, will be one of 3 requirements. So if I was to go in the second assessment section on Canvas, basically you notice that you will need to complete a 1,000 word essay, I should say, to communicate your journey, communicate your findings, communicate your ideas, communicate the whole process, and more of that will be explored next week. And in addition to that, you'll be required to do a 10-minute presentation to go through your ideas and whatnot. We will be doing that in a classroom environment. Closer to week 8, I will be creating a schedule for each and every one of you to, within the video conferencing tool, communicate your ideas and whatnot. If you can't really make it to the scheduled session, an alternative solution will be provided, and that is to use either Microsoft PowerPoint or even Zoom to record yourself whilst communicating your ideas to myself and your peers. So those are the options available, and this will be accompanied with a 1,000-word essay that will help you communicate the various stages of the project itself. If I was to go back to the beginning of this presentation, just want to reiterate the fact that we need to think about this model here with discover, define, develop, and finally deliver. Next week, we're going to be talking about deliver. We are only in week 3. This is due in week 8, so we still have quite a lot of time. And if you're worried about having to put 1,000 words together, let's think about it this way. If we were to divide that into 4 different parts, that's 250 words per section. So that's not a lot at all. I'd be surprised if everyone would struggle. In fact, I think that everyone will struggle to keep it to 1,000 words. So at least that's my point of view. Have a read through the last 2 pages of this presentation. Again, that's available on Canvas. And go through the questionnaire itself. I would say do that in the next few days. If you already have a partner in mind that you want to work with, please let me know either via email or in Canvas itself. Send me a message through Canvas, and I'll take note of that and guide you through the next stages. Do we have any questions at this stage?
All good for me.
Perfect. Zoe's been very quiet. I'm not sure whether I should be worried or not. I'll take that as a no. For those watching the recording at a later stage, if any of what was discussed today either doesn't make sense, or if you're worried about the deliverables, or even having a partner to work with for that actual assessment, please let me know, and I'll be more than happy to go through that with you. Zoe just wrote something in text, not a problem at all. So please take some time to digest all the information that was shared today, and let's continue that conversation over the next few days in order to finalize how everything will run for this assessment. I'm going to stop recording now and take any sort of informal questions that you may have.